G'day, folks. ZD here. Welcome to the first ever assembling of this particular crew, but not the first ever of the Maxwell podcast, because there has been a bunch of them. But we are here for the first Path of Exile 2 podcast since it has launched into early access with myself, Ziggy, Zizarin, who has been streaming nonstop and is probably very tired. Crouching Tuna, down in the bottom left there, and Rex and Tarax. Actually, you guys might be in different orders than other streams, but welcome, folks. It's good to sit down and digest some PoE 2 action. I love a good chat.
I can't believe we're finally playing it.
Vent and share our excitement. Yeah, right. 5 years leading up to this point. Yeah. How does it? I guess that's a good place to start. How does it feel to be in and finally playing? Are you filled with excitement and hope and future for the future, or are you filled with dread and doom and gloom, or is it everything you wanted and much more, or much less?
I'm a hoper. I'm loving it. So I'm actually in the camp that I do enjoy PoE 1 more, but that's like PoE 1 isn't like 9.5 or a 10 for me, and PoE 2 is like a 8.5 or 9. Like, I'm very hopeful. Like, by the way, I actually hated day 2 and I was kind of miserable and I was like, oh god, no. But then after they did those changes, I'm a lot more positive. Like, I am making a feedback sheet.
The dodge roll change, that sort of thing.
Yeah, the dodge roll especially, because I died to those stupid fucking beetles. But honestly, like, I'm having a lot of fun, and I'm still like, I'm actually able to go into this with the mindset that it is early access. A lot of people aren't able to do that. They are treating it like a full launch. So I'm like, I remember saying on day 2, like, it might be frustrating right now, but this is the worst state Path of Exile 2 will ever be in. TM, hopefully.
Good thing to remember, isn't it?
Yeah, so I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, okay. So that's pretty interesting then to hear that, like, you're a PoE 1 enjoyer primarily, but that you're still feeling very optimistic from the sounds of things. You're definitely not dooming.
I enjoy both.
Yeah. Okay. What about yourself, Rax?
So I would say my opinion is almost exactly what Zizarin just said. I would say I get asked this all the time: what game is in a better state, PoE 1 or PoE 2? I think PoE 1 is a little bit better. The thing that PoE 1 really satiates is just zooming. You're just flying already by like Act 4. You're essentially like mapping through like the last 6 acts. It's so fun just to fly through everything. I think PoE 2, like, when I think back to all the different ARPGs in like the last 10 years that have launched in early access, I think PoE 2 probably has the most content and the best structure of any game. So I think the future is extremely bright. The fact that we got that patch so early and it fixed a lot of core problems that people were having immediately. I could not believe that after the first weekend, already on the first like Monday or Tuesday, they already had a significant patch about a lot of things that people were talking about. I think the game is amazing for the state that it's in. I think like 6 months to 1 year when it launches, I think it's probably gonna be one of the strongest, if not the strongest, ARPG release ever.
Yeah. Right on. Tuna, what about yourself, mate?
Sorry. Wait. One sec. Yeah, I just had a quick addendum to that. Like, one thing that I feel like PoE 1 does particularly well that PoE 2 doesn't right now is just like agency. Like we have a little bit less like choice over like exactly what content to run and stuff like that.
Yeah. True. Yeah. PoE 1's really nailed that, especially lately. Being able to pick exactly what you want. Play the exact Path of Exile 1 you want. So it definitely is a long way off in that regard, isn't it?
Yep.
But we'll talk about endgame and that stuff a lot later on, I expect. But just overall sentiments for now. Tuna, how are you feeling about things, mate?
I really like PoE 2, but I really like it. Also, need to take this with a pinch of salt because we are in the honeymoon phase. But I'm really enjoying like understanding the mechanics, understanding the builds, and also being in a stage where we don't have access to the tools that we would otherwise have in PoE 1. Which is really, for me, like really exciting. Actually, like playing the game and getting feedback from the game as opposed to getting feedback from Path of Building or something like that, right? It's a different dynamic, and it sort of makes you step out and think about things a little differently, and it also makes you feel like a noob, which is a really humbling and just a really, really fun experience. Now, gameplay-wise, like there's a lot to work on, I think, but the game is, as Rax said, it's a really good state, and I'm really thankful that we can get to play it like already, because it felt like if they didn't get it out, then they would kind of just keep scope creeping and then get to the point where it's
Yeah.
like, so I'm really glad
Yep.
they just put it out and we can play it, and now we can give our feedback and just enjoy it and see it improve from here on out. And as you said, like it's never, like, now is the worst state it's ever gonna be in. And also I'm really looking forward to the future. Like, I'm really also looking forward to just getting the tools as well, like, and just seeing things improve. And yeah, it's gonna be great.
Oh, quick question, Tuna. Do you prefer the game with or without POB?
I prefer without, but it's a little bit of a, like, because I always preferred the like action reaction type of building, where like I try something in game and I see results.
Mm.
And I think obviously, like, the thing about POB is that my build would just be like 100 times better with it, right? And that's like, it's natural because I would be able to measure exactly the consequences of the things that I do with my build. But I just think it's more fun to do it without, because then it's like more of a, you just feel like more accomplished when something works, if that makes sense.
Right.
It's amazing, this little tiny slice of time that we have without Path of Building. So for those of you new exiles joining us potentially, Path of Building is effectively a hardcore calculator for Path of Exile builds. It allows you to simulate and suggest and recommend the things that are really going to optimize your character to the point where, this is the thing that will give you the most damage. So it's a extremely powerful tool for solving builds in Path of Exile 1, and it will be here soon, probably. I wouldn't be surprised. I saw some news recently that it looks like some things are being worked on for it. So it will be interesting to see the amount of power creep we have just by virtue of that releasing in the future. Like, if we all just get 30-40% stronger, maybe more.
More than that, yeah. I think just to add something to that as well, like, one thing that I don't like is not having like a ladder where I can look at people's gear. And I think that is going to be like the biggest catalyst to build improvable, because like the thing is, like, you might be like a good player, you might be smart and things like that, but other people are too. And learning from other people is always going to be, like, in my opinion, the catalyst to just basically build booms, right? But at the moment, it feels like people are sort of like playing specific skills and not really like exploring things. And I think that's part of the reason why. It's because we are not able to actually like copy from other people, basically, like understand mechanics, like why they did things and stuff like that.
Yeah, build making is so iterative. Like Path of PoE Ninja is a way that we basically steal builds from each other. And that's how we all kind of evolve and adapt our builds over time through that process. And but not having that as well is also a big deal. Or maybe almost as much as the Path of Building, like you're saying. Definitely, you sound a lot like me, Tuna, in that you really seem to enjoy that. Having a lot of things to figure out and solve and try to understand and physically experiment with your character and stuff. So I'm really enjoying that process too. And I think like it's good to kind of see that bias in ourselves as well, because we're going to maybe enjoy this state of an unfinished game more than the game quality might warrant, just because we're really enjoying this process of learning something new. I definitely try to be conscious of that when I'm like sharing my feelings of how much fun I'm having. So I'm having so much fun. And yet I have a list of very significant complaints about the game or criticisms about the game right now. Like I have some things I'm very worried about that I'm interested to see how they're going to solve, and some things I'm like, how are they actually going to solve this? How are they going to balance out like the two desires between the different Path of Exile communities? And there's three distinct groups now. It almost feels like your Path of Exile 1 Zoomers, your PoE 2 people who really wanted the promise that was being sold of this slower, more tactical game. The promise that was very well realized in those first couple acts, but is lost by endgame potentially.
Yep.
I'm sure we'll talk about that soon.
I was very surprised about like the kill time on bosses compared to white and blue monsters. I actually was expecting bosses to have literally 20 times more HP, because there are currently blue monsters that I take the same time to kill as a boss. I am not even exaggerating. I just killed the candle boss in Crypt in 0.5 seconds. And I had a blue monster die in 1 second. Yeah,
it's that's Path of Exile 1 stuff all over again. I think right now we're obviously suffering from a somewhat last minute implementation of a end game, and it's all, like we said, it's very easy to remember or to forget that it's early access. It's very hard to actually kind of Okay, right, because it has released with so much more content, and the early parts of the game are so much more polished than many games release with, especially in early access. But I'm overall loving it and enjoying it more now than I would be playing Path of Exile 1 right now, despite my list of massive like things that I'm worried about and concerned about and want changed and fixed. So that's kind of my overall feelings. But I'm curious what you folks are playing currently. Rax, what have you been playing? What build have you been doing? How's it been going?
So the first thing that I wanted to do in PoE2 was essentially try to play 4 archetypes, like as many archetypes as I could, to try to get an understanding of how this game actually is. So I started with the Cast on Freeze Sorceress, and then I got to finish the campaign, threw up a guide on that, and then it was dead. So goodbye.
Oof.
And then then I tried respecking, and the thing that I respec to was way worse, and then I was out of gold. And I'm sure we'll talk about respec costs later. But I was very sad we didn't get like a respec token there. So then I went Ranger, and the Ranger was just really, really strong, just absolutely frying everything. So I beat the campaign on the Ranger. And then I went Invoker Monk with Ice Strike, and in the beginning, it felt terrible. I was actually asking chat, like, what do you guys do as an early game monk? And they said, Rax, you put on a bow and you play Ranger. I'm like, that's actually the smartest thing I've ever heard of. I put on a bow, and then it was way stronger. And then you finally get Ice Strike. And it's like Zizarin said, I killed the final boss on my Ice Strike monk, just putting together my own build. I froze him in the beginning, and he was dead before he could unfreeze. So the Act 6 boss, dead. So I was like, okay, the monk is frying. And then today I made a witch, and now I'm in Act 5, and the witch is just murdering everything, just walking forward with our minions and plowing everything down. So I would say probably the weakest of the 4 for me, if I had to play the campaign again, the one I would like to play the least again is probably the Sorceress. Without the Cast on Freeze, what am I going to do? Like Spark and Flame Wall? I couldn't. I tried all 3 elements as I was leveling. I couldn't find anything better. But the other 3, Ranger, Monk, and the Witch, felt amazing for me.
Nice.
That's interesting to hear, because Sorceress has had like a lot of really positive opinions. But yeah, I think maybe it's been in very specific archetypes, which maybe have changed a bit. It sounds like, and this is something I've noticed too, is it feels like we have, despite having so many skills, somewhat of a limited skill package in some areas. Like, I don't know, yeah, like I have heard Lightning maybe doesn't have a lot in the early stages there, or people just kind of scratching their head about how to play that side of things. Sounds like,
Well,
yeah,
it's
similar
new
experience.
spells.
I do think
What's
some
that?
of that though is that we just need to learn a bit more, because we are seeing
Absolutely.
like, I was saying like, oh, I don't know how to do this, and then somebody was like, actually, somebody is doing this, and I was like, oh, that's cool. So
I had a really good time with lightning spells actually. When it's
That's
just
good. What ones?
it's literally just Spark and Ooze. Like, of course, you use Flame Wall because
Yep.
PoE2, you just click a button and you get more damage. But Spark
Yeah.
and Ooze, and then you get to beginning of Act 3, and you get Mana Tempest, and then from there you're just a god basically, because Mana Tempest is
That's
insane.
That's good to hear that. I think there's
You
big
put that
gaps from
down.
just people not
awesome.
kind of happening into a build that works for them. So that archetype doesn't feel right. And Rax touched on something really interesting there too, which is weapon swaps, which I feel like are super unexplored currently. Like, I know I've barely touched on it just with some leap slamming. But I've seen some people starting to explore that stuff more, and it's opening up the game a lot, because we seem to have a situation going on where we don't have a lot of ability. Like, we have less skills than we might otherwise, because we're, just using mace skills. But if we had, if we were taking advantage of skills from the other archetypes, from the other weapon types, then all of a sudden things open up a lot more. So, what have you been playing then, Tuna?
I have been a serial reroller as well. I started
It's hard
on a
not
Blood
to.
Mage. So the Blood Mage, unfortunately, as you guys know, I was pretty bad to begin with. The Leech was basically non-functional, and your first Ascendancy is a downside. That was a bit rough, but so I went like Cast on Freeze on that one, also because it just felt like a no-brainer. And I was playing that for a little bit. But then I re-rolled soon after, because just wasn't enjoying, like I spec'd into the 10% Leech and it wasn't moving my HP, so that was kind of a little bit sad. Now they fixed that though, so that's cool. So that was my first build. My second build, I made an invoker, a spell invoker. I wanted to see it has like the meta energy gain thing, plus 35%, and it's multiplicative with all the increases that you have on the tree. So I was playing cast on Ignite, and one flame wall cast would drop one comment. Basically, it was completely OP. It was really, really, really strong. And that got nerfed 2 days after, or 1 day after, literally, that I made it. That was like T4 maps, literally, like I leveled, and then that got nerfed. So now I'm on my third build, and I'm really enjoying spells at the moment. I've really missed playing spells in Path of Exile 1 because hand casting hasn't really been a thing in Path of Exile 1 unless you get for like super high investment usually. So now I'm playing Spark, Archmage, but the caveat is that I'm actually not really dealing damage with Spark. I'm using Spark as a supporting skill for Lightning Conduit. I'm stacking Shock and Shock Magnitude. I'm getting like 70% shocks and doubling them with Stormweaver. And when it procs, right, like it just deals like 1.5 million damage.
Oh, that's really good.
What about users?
So I've had a few people remark they were a bit surprised at this because I usually like always try to like POB min-max the stuff of everything, rating up on everything, but like the start is so sacred. It's supposed to be special. So I went in with like a very the main thing that I looked up was ascendancy tree. Because you can't respec ascendancy. So I was like, okay, I want to have a rough idea of what I'm doing. And I was like, I'm starting Titan. And then I ascended Warbringer. But like literally at the altar, I changed my mind. People are like, oh, you're ascending. What are you going to do? And I'm like, Titan. And then I got there and it was like a Lord of the Rings moment. I was like, why shouldn't I keep it? And I'm like, Warbringer. And yeah, like I've like barely looked anything up. I've been very like just playing and seeing like, oh cool, I found a new unique and having that fresh new player experience. And I started on hardcore. I was playing really, really careful. I was playing like a totem Warbringer. And I got to like level 36, 38, something like that. With like 15 all rest because I just wasn't finding any gear. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to stay in one zone and farm for like 5 hours. But then I got trapped in by a bunch of beetles and killed. And I was like, oh, never mind. And then I was like, you know what?
For your beetle exploits, this
was before I even knew about it.
I knew ahead of time.
Yeah, they knew. They knew it was coming. You could have done it then. I should have. But yeah, I probably would have died anyway. So I continued on softcore because I honestly, I was like, day one is very not hardcore viable. I was like, I would be bashing my face into hardcore, and I don't want to do that. I want to enjoy the game more. So I went to maps, and I was having a really good time in the campaign. I was vibing. I got to maps, and I'm like, wow, this fucking sucks. Because I got to maps with 8 lightning rest, and I was getting chain one hit. I saw lightning ability, and I'm like, and I ended up farming for 16 hours. I farmed 900,000 gold. Used it all gambling. Didn't get a single upgrade. Farmed another 16 hours. The total amount of white rings I found to Alk was 2. And I was just like, I was molding. And people are like, so how do you feel about the game? And I'm like, and I was just saying, like, I'm waiting for GDD to make a post. Like, this can't be it. This isn't it. And then that post came, and I was like, oh, I felt so vindicated and so justified. And I had, like, people kept writing, like, Steel Mage is mad, Steel Mage is angry. And, like, we both had the same experience with getting to maps. And it's kind of weird as a content creator because you're no-lifing the game so much that you end up being a little bit ahead of the curve. So, like, you have all the people that are still in campaign. Like, what are you wrong? Like you're wrong. Skill issue. Like, skill issue, just get better. But they haven't been in maps yet. Yeah. I also I was shocked at how many white items were dropping in maps. Just not rings. Rings don't exist. But I was like, I definitely need a filter. I remember hearing back quotes from podcasts like, oh, you shouldn't need a filter when you get to maps. And I'm like, I do.
You need a filter so much. Oh my God.
Yeah. So I just started making one on day one. Like, actually on day one, I was putting in one item at a time. So I have like this long a list in my filter with like just every item I didn't want to see.
Artisanal filter making, nice.
Yeah, but then when that patch came, I was like, you know what? I don't know if this is enough to go hardcore, but I'm gonna gamble that it is. I started playing hardcore. I went a witch summoner, and it's a blast. I'm really enjoying it. I'm having so much fun. I'm hard stuck right now in tier 2 maps because I am solo self-found, which is a huge mistake. This is a bad idea to play solo self-found. You have to be like torture enjoyer. But the gear progression is really fun when you get it. I'm just hard stuck trying to get a minion helmet with any resist so that I can go energy shield.
I can't believe you went solo self-found as well as hardcore here, because I know you were debating even playing hardcore in the first place. And now ESSF as well.
I think especially PoE 2 is a lot more fun on hardcore trade league for me. I think it will be. I'm going solo self-found until either myself or somebody kills the boss on the hardest difficulty, the Uber. I think it looks so one-shotty. So I think a lot of people are gonna die to it. And obviously now I won't be able to practice on standard. But I do have some regret because the migrate option is broken. So I can't even migrate. So I'm very stuck on SSF until they fix the migrate button.
Enforced SSF. Damn,
Yeah.
so ethical. I love it.
But like, honestly, between farming the beetle before maps, like that helped a lot.
That buff to the drop rates was incredible. I have not been having the problem of that content creator problem of going too fast and being ahead of the curve. I've been playing so slowly. My run has been, like you said, that first run is sacrosanct, right? You know, it's so important. So I've been going exceedingly slow and exploring everything and documenting everything and finding all of the secrets and mapping all of the maps. And it has been so fun. Like I said, I have a lot of issues with the game, a lot of stuff I want to see fixed. I'm probably going to do like a big ramble video at some point about all that stuff. But I'm just still having so much fun. And if someone told me originally, I was like, I'm definitely going to play PoE 1 and PoE 2 at the same time. You know, go back and forth. But now, if you told me to play PoE 1 right now, I would, I'd have a physical reaction. I'd vomit or cry or both or something like that. I don't think I could right now.
Oh, I could easily.
Maybe by February, I might feel a bit different. Hopefully by then I'm kind of a bit sated and can enjoy a new PoE 1 league. But right now it feels hard to do. But I've been playing Mercenary Grenadier with grenade action and loving life. Flashbang, my precious, my beautiful flashbang. I have to say, in general, I love, this is one of my highlights of PoE 2. Apart from, one of my highlights is ailments. How good have they done with non-damage ailments specifically? I feel like freeze and stun and electrocute. I love the build-up system. I love the stagger bar. They feel powerful, maybe a little too powerful, but they are so satisfying to engage with, and even so much detail to it as well. So when you play someone who's using flashbang all the time, you start to notice all these details where, like, you have these guys with these big shield arms, you flashbang them and they drop their shield. The guys with the big stones that slam down on you, you flashbang them, they drop it, it breaks, they can't pick it back up. Like, they lose abilities, mobs change, fights change so much.
Did not realize that.
Never noticed
Did not
that.
realize that at all.
I didn't either.
When you were talking about debuffs and stuff, I was really surprised how strong freeze was. Like, the fact that it can freeze before the bar is filled up. I thought it would have been more like freeze fills up the bar really fast and gets a freeze cell fast. But it just like I'm playing a freeze mage while I'm tired and I don't want to risk my main. And I'm just like right clicking things and it's frozen and I'm like, this is crazy.
Yeah, it's especially if you can alternate between two different ailments, you can stagger bar, and then while they have their stun resistance, you can while slowly building up stun, you can freeze or electrocute or something like that. There's so much you can do to have some more control in these fights, and it makes a huge difference in some content. Obviously, like the Trial of Seconds and things, just being able to stun everything is a pretty big deal. So I've been loving that experience, and ultimately not too far in endgame as a result of my very slow play, just a few tiers into maps. But I've been enjoying that so far, but definitely it feels like a very different game from the early campaign. So I'll be interested to see where that goes. But yeah, loving the grenades, I'm very excited to explore a lot of the other archetypes, though. It's hard to not re-roll. I'm trying to force myself to not.
What are you going to play next?
Originally, it was going to be Monk, but I'm actually wondering if I want to like glutton for punishment a little bit and go straight into Warrior because of how rough Warrior's early game sounds like it is. It seemed like a very strong late game, but it would be cool to, I don't know, make some content showing how to approach warrior early game and doing the trial of Sekima on a warrior and stuff like that. Because I think there are solutions. I do suspect GG is probably going to make some changes that might help, though.
Yeah.
That was really funny as a totem player because I went warrior at start and I was in hardcore, and on warrior, if you're going totem, you actually don't need a physical weapon. All you need is plus skill level. So I found like +2 skill level pretty early, and I was doing great.
Attack, yeah.
So people were like, "You're the only warrior that's happy right now," because like most people were hitting. So like trial of Sekima and stuff, like that was super easy with totems. I was just running around doing the armor breaking thing, and I'm like, "This is great. This is awesome. I'm so happy I went warrior." And people were showing me clips of other people like literally molding in trial of Sekima and stuff, and I was like, "Oh, this is fun."
Totems win again. Shaking my head after being removed from the previous game. Here's what's going on. I'm glad to hear that. At least there was one nice feeling build from the early game there.
Yeah.
So just kind of on the campaign first before we move on to like Ascendancy and Endgame and stuff a bit more. I'm curious what your bosses, right? Like for me, that's the biggest highlight of all the highlights. How incredible the boss fights have been. I'm curious, what is each your both most loved boss fight and most hated boss fight? What about you, Rax? Do you have some ones that really stood out to you?
Yeah. So the one I hated, the one I hate the most by far is the Queen of Filth. And there's two reasons why I hate that fight. When she does her double roly-poly slam thing, she has like the most ridiculous hitbox, and it's not just the hitbox of the slam itself. She will like drag you. So if you don't like dodge roll completely like perpendicular to her path, she's going to drag you into the corner and double smash you. And it's like, I don't know how many times she killed my characters. I was like absolutely raging at her. And I think she's also the boss that just like raises her hand and throws like a 100-mile-an-hour like boulder at you. And I'm just like, dude, that is one of the hardest things to dodge or even see that she's doing it. I think it's Queen of Filth. The Viper is pretty rough as well with all the guards around you, and she does like it was a really cool fight, but all like the different circles that she spawns, like the poison ones and the chaos ones. And then if you get too close to the wall, they like stab you and then they shove you back in. It's like, oh my God, this boss is insane. And then another thing, like Zizrin said, when a lot of like the blues or the rare monsters are harder than the bosses, what about those two birds? The two yellow birds. Yeah, I think it's in Act 2.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, side quest.
Yep.
And I went there and I was playing on my sorceress, and then one of them had like the mana burning one. So they're like jumping on me and burning my mana. I'm like, okay, I can't play the game. Like they're just
the mana
me.
burn one is insane.
It's so
like
bad.
that's so crazy routine. As a mom build, I'm like, I need to get out of being mom just because of the circle, because they don't even like sometimes it'll target my minion. So it just like perfectly runs into like me being in the circle. I'm like trying to stay on top of it. And I'm like,
so those rare fights are quite interesting. So they are effectively like bosses, but they're not unique bosses. They decided that they weren't interesting enough to turn into a unique, so they turn them into like unique rares. So it's kind of their own unique class. But because they're rares, they have randomized affixes. So people are going to have wildly different experiences with those fights. And when there's two rares together, that's a classic PoE thing, right? Overlapping auras and stuff. You get that shenanigans start to occur. So I did hear a lot of people having issues with that fight.
Yeah.
The Hugo and Moonin one with the two rares together. And there's a few like that hidden around the campaign. But it's also kind of an interesting little feature, isn't it? What did you have a favorite fight though, Rax? What was the boss fight you loved?
Yeah, like the two birds, like Godskin duo in Elden Ring or whatever. But probably the favorite thing, like one thing that I really love about PoE 2, this like doesn't usually matter to me in video games, but I thought the voice acting was so good, like across all the different bosses. That I actually love Doriani, the final fight, and how he's just like taunting you and screaming at you the whole time. That for me was probably my favorite fight.
So good. What about you, Tuna? Favorite and most and least favorite, let's say.
I have to second that. Doriani visually and everything about him, like the sounds. Like I'm a sound enjoyer. Before I was a streamer, I was an audio engineer, and from that perspective as well, like that was like amazing. The sound was really good.
Cool.
his animations. You know, when he does his like little like he explodes and then he reconstructs himself and slams on you. It's like, yeah. The only thing is like I wish the fight was harder. I thought it was too easy.
Yeah.
But,
it's a bit easy by that point for a lot of builds, I feel.
It was a bit like, you know, but it was such a good fight. And yeah, I mean, really, really well done for that. I guess like the hardest fight or most hated fight, I suppose. I had like trouble with two bosses. It was Viper Natsuapi, and then also the Onyx guy that gives you fire resistance. I forgot his name. He's like an Onyx lizard, and he's also in as you get into the Machinarium.
Yeah, was he Blackjaw or Blackmore or something like that, or
something like that? Onyx,
he's like one of the Warhammer Fantasy guys. Yeah, Blackjaw. That one.
Pretty cool, yeah.
He has like tracking that no other boss has in the game. And
he's clever.
You just go beside him and he's like he doesn't care. He just turns around and really punishes you for being at range. But it's also one of the bosses that taught me that everything seems to be put there on purpose in Path of Exile 2. So like, you know how it has the pillars around the room? I was thinking like, oh, it's just aesthetically like there to be, you know, like, yeah, that's just environmental design or whatever. But no, like if you like, you know, when he does these fire slashes, you stand behind the pillars and it just completely like it makes the boss a joke. So I really actually appreciated the fact that like this boss taught me that I should be like looking around and be more situationally aware of what's going on to like have an easier time, basically.
Oh mate, you touched on something so good there. There's so much attention to detail in monster and boss design and like arena design and stuff like that. That is definitely where they've like excelled 11 out of 10, I feel. Blowing away like so many other games, like the entire genre, I feel. Because like you said, there are so many things there that are designed to teach you something as well. Like the monkey. Yeah. That guy's to teach you dodge rolling. he teaches you a lesson in dodge rolling.
That guy, he has like his slam
or blocking,
but he has the Elden Ring slam where it's like he's like that and he's like, you know,
the get you exactly because that's what it is. It's teaching you that like wait until it actually is about to hit you.
Exactly, like as you see
that's such an important skill because a lot of bosses do have tracking, so you actually have to wait for that to go off and. Yeah, that's like controlled dodging the training dummy, like the training lesson. It's pretty good. I was just like, it's so good. He almost needs to be earlier in the game, I feel, to help people with that particular lesson. But
his role sucks.
What's that?
His role sucks. The monkey, you know, like when you're just standing next to him and he rolls. That move is like, sorry to interrupt there.
He's a spicy guy. Do you have a favorite and least favorites? Did we get you off? Oh, no, we did,
Yeah. So the last two bosses of Act 2 are my favorite. I call it the face mash skeleton. Like, honestly, I could like hear. I was listening to my own music, but if I could go back and play it for the first time, I'd put on the dancer music. And that was like the only point where my build fell off a little bit in damage because it was a while since I had upgrade. So it ended up being a long fight. And especially on softcore, that is a lot more of an enjoyable experience. And I was still in hardcore at that point. So that was such a fun fight for me. And then I died before doing the Act 2 end boss. And I actually like wasn't able to do it on my first attempt. I did it on my second. And it was a really long fight. It was like really whittling down. So I really enjoyed both of those. I think the hardest was Viper, but I don't feel like I disliked it. I thought it was pretty cool, except for the bugs with getting stuck in the shield. But my most disliked boss is probably just the Titan, which it's a little sad because I think if it was bug free, it probably would have been my favorite fight. But there's so many bugs in the Titan fight. There's like 5 different ones.
This happens a lot with bosses that are like off the edge of a platform where you get like weird targeting and other bugs coming up. So
I felt so bad for Quinn's death there, where like he was so over tanky. And it's not like a large telegraphed attack, and Quinn got hit for like 2.5k damage in the campaign. And I'm like, okay, that's probably not intended. From like a very fast like slap attack. I was like, okay. So I was terrified going there myself on hardcore. I actually overfarmed specifically for that fight to just insta-kill it. But yeah, those were definitely my favorites. Like, it's really, really enjoyed the attention to detail. And any fight that had like a lot of life, like the count as well. I thought the count was so cool. I really liked the facing stage, and I was trying to count in my head like 1, 2, 3, dodge. 1,
Yeah,
2,
with the
3,
poetry,
dodge.
it's so good.
1, yeah.
Yeah, and that's
Wait,
my
what?
that's my
Poetry?
favorite. Yeah, the poetry during the you didn't know wait, you didn't notice? What are you counting based on then? With the
I
fog
just like do like a
phase.
metronome in my head the way I do on
Yeah,
Uber Elder.
dude, he does like poetry during the fog phase, and it has a rhythm to it, like as poetry often does, and that is the dodge timing is based
Paying
on the
attention is
poetry.
not my strong suit.
So I don't know what the specifics of it. I'm not a poetry expert, but it's like it's like a 3-beat, and then it's like a 3-beat and then dodge, and then he does his next 3-beat and 3-beat and dodge. So it's so cool. It's it's my favorite actually. I think it's the strongest act boss fight. And I think the best fight overall.
Yeah.
It's got so many abilities. It's all very cool. The music crescendoing at the exact moment as he's getting raged and turning into the wolf, and oh my lord, it's so sick. I had to both times actually stop myself from because he doesn't his abilities, and I appreciate this. I guess they're not hard coded to occur at certain health phases, as in he doesn't become immune and then go into his fog phase, right? He just does it if he's still alive. But if you stun lock him and kill him, you can skip the fog phase entirely, which I feel like Path of Exile 1 didn't do that very often. Most of the time you were forced into some sort of immunity phase.
Yeah, like
That's
the crowd
not the
bell.
case a lot of times here. Yeah. Yeah, the crow bell's kind of awful, but that's definitely my favorite by far. It's just such a cool fight. I like that you mentioned Viper because it is an example of a hard fight that's very punishing. It can be frustrating if you're dying a lot to it, but I actually think it's a pretty good fight, despite being one of the hardest ones. Like I died to Viper a lot. It was one of my most maybe 2 or 3 times, which is probably one of my worst. But
do you think
it was
a little bit of the difficulty is because you need to be basically touched by Chris to get chaos resist during the campaign?
That's certainly an aspect, right? I have to imagine you trivialize a bit of that fight with if you just incidentally get some chaos res, which is so rare. But you do. I pop the charms on. I've got the charms for a little bit of help and stuff like that. Does help a bit, but mechanically very interesting fight and very challenging fight. It feels like they really nailed that feeling that you're dueling someone who's a freaking expert. That's probably actually, I guess, the similar thing between those two fights. Like, I feel like you're having a sick duel, which is not something I've really thought about with a lot of boss fights. Usually you're fighting a monster and it feels, gamey, but these guys feel like you're actually dueling them a bit more. My least favorite was... Go ahead, Rex.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to add one thing about the Viper, and this happens in other games as well and other boss fights. But one particular thing that bothers me about the Viper is if I'm playing like the Summoner Witch and I'm throwing firewalls everywhere and my minions are there, when she jumps up and she's going to start throwing those huge AoE blasts that you have to dodge, I just can't see them. The entire floor is filled with fire and my minions. Sometimes it's the visual clarity part, and then you die to it's like I didn't even see that the circle was under me.
Yeah. I had that issue with grenades too, because they tend to leave a bit of smoke after the fact if you go really hard with them. So I had the same issue, with a few of those fights, and that one in particular. I think my least favorite fight, though, I'm surprised no one mentioned it, but it was funny because a lot of people were telling me as I was going up towards it that it was one of their favorites. It's the, I can't actually remember the name of him. It's the goldsmith guy. It's a side quest to go get his forging hammer so that you can have the reforging bench. The giant... He walks through the lava.
Guy in the pit?
Met cool.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah. The molten core one, because it's got an enrage timer, man. I don't.
Yeah.
You have to kill him by a certain point, or the lava goes to the end, and you drown in the lava. I
love that. But there was one very confusing. There was one very confusing thing to me about that fight, because he's in that pit, and we're above it. There's a lever to activate the lava. Why do we hit the lever and then go down to fight him? Why don't we A, hit the lever, and then just watch him die, or B, not hit the lever and go kill him?
Because then then we'd lose the loot. The loot would get drowned in the lavas, and we are exiles above all else.
Okay, then don't hit the lever. Right? Go down and bash his face in.
True. I think he breaks it. So, but I think my main issue with the fight was not even the range type so much as he actually just stays standing in the lava. Like, I was ranged, so it wasn't too bad, but I was like, oh man, poor melee characters right now have to run into the lava to fight him. He just stays in there, and half the time he runs away. He runs even further into the lava. It's like, what are you doing, dude? Come on, fight us.
Have you seen the damage of that lava in maps?
I heard that like Burning Ground and stuff was doing a lot in some cases. I tested a low tier map and did literally nothing. So I don't know what. I'm guessing there's some weird scaling going on. Damage
The
scaling.
lava is almost instant kill.
Yeah, that's. I mean, probably don't want to step in lava, I suppose, but you need some god killing 75 resist exile.
Yeah,
maybe.
when I fought the fire giant on my monk, the stepping in the lava on whatever it was, Act 5 or whatever, was an instant death. Like boom, instantly, one frame. One thing you can do with the giant though, I learned this the hard way, is when the fight starts, you can actually just kite him and go way back. And especially if you have like you're playing Ice Strike, I just ice struck him at the very end of the arena, and he was trying to like run back and start his fire. I just kept freezing him, and I actually killed him.
I love it
before he could get
brilliant.
back. Yeah.
That's so good. Yeah. I definitely like second time around had no worries because didn't even get to halfway point, just like stun him outside the lava. But I didn't think about pulling him away and freezing him or something. It's so good. Yeah, I love that. All your mechanics are when you go in the lava, huh? Well, I do. It makes me appreciate the fight a little more, honestly, that you figured that out. I think that's pretty clever.
If you're going warrior next, just kite him back.
Yeah, get him in there and push him around, do some knockback, do some stun, stagger him out there. Overall on the campaign, what major changes would you folks like to see? Do you have like some things you'd really change a lot about the campaign? What about you, Tuna?
Yes, item progression.
Really?
I think in a campaign, like you don't get access to tools to fix your character soon enough, and you don't get
what
introduced.
Sort of tools?
So I mean, as like Sis said, you don't have chaos resistance when you go up against chaos resistance, and in general, I don't particularly like the gameplay loop of checking vendors. I think vendors are really lame. I don't like gold either. I always preferred using currency, and I always thought that like Path of Exile's main charm was the fact that this was a parallel universe without gold, and you're picking up rocks and throwing them at items and seeing what happens, and you just don't get to experience that soon enough in the game, and it feels like it's just like it got better obviously with the update, right? And they just throw currency at you early to alleviate that a lot, but it just definitely didn't feel like the itemization was good enough for me. It felt like I got lucky on one item and then I wouldn't change it for the rest of the campaign, kind of thing. And I think that's really a shame, because I feel like most players, the game is the campaign, and if you don't introduce itemization into them, you're missing out on so much of what PoE is about, which is items. PoE is about items, right?
That's so interesting.
The most.
Yeah, I feel like I had the opposite experience, and yet I still agree with a lot of your points. Like, I agree that like vendors being one of the biggest sources of gear and one of your biggest tools is a bit lame compared to actually like killing a boss and getting the items and stuff. So I do agree with that one, and yet I still kind of enjoyed that process, and I actually loved the itemization through the campaign a lot. I felt like I did have the tools, like definitely some gaps missing. Like you said, getting chaos res is pretty much just not a thing. But and there was points where I was like, were essences bugged? I found so many essences in Act 1 and 2, or like Act 1, and then there was none in 2 or 3 all the way through until they did a patch, and then there was essences again. I don't know what was going on with that. So I'd love some more consistency of that, because they're a really powerful tool for that, but they're just not nearly available enough. Or it seems that maybe there's some extreme variance on some of this stuff. Some people have completely wildly different experiences with
I didn't get any
getting resources and not getting them. But I overall loved the feeling of the item progression, because I did feel like I had the tools, even if some of the tools were a bit lamer, like the vendors. And items felt so meaningful, like getting a rare drop, was it like a piece of jewelry, or just getting a good base, or any of this stuff felt so good. Even Exalt slamming, I went SSF for the whole, like the entirety of the campaign at least. And I saw people commenting things like, I used more Exalts in this game than I have in my entire 10 years of Path of Exile 1. I'm like, yeah, I get that. It's it actually feels really good too. It's still kind of like, there's still the trade thing that you can't really solve, where it still makes sense to not Exalt slam and use it on trade instead. But it's the closest it's ever been to actually making it feel okay to use Exalts. And I quite like that. But yeah, it's interesting. Completely different experiences there. What we were talking about, Ziz, was the if there's anything big we change about the campaign.
That's a lot I would change. But one thing I noticed, like even after the loot drop rate, I feel like Act 1 has like significantly more drops than any other act.
It does.
I feel like it, yeah.
I think on my new character, I think I got like 11 or 15 exalts in Act 1 and 2 in Act 2. Something like that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
huh?
I had a
I
similar
was half
experience.
joking, like I should just like make repeated like Act 1 characters.
Exactly.
Like I do
had
actually
the same
wonder
issue.
if there was a bit of a boost, and I wonder if it's because maybe there's a bit more exploration boosting stuff that is giving you some maybe guaranteed drops early in Act 1, because that's a thing. I don't know about like guaranteed exalts and stuff, but it might be like a boosted chance for, you know, some of the little side chests and stuff to drop that stuff early in the game to get players going.
I think so.
So I
Or
think
like a
there is something
stimulus
like that
check.
going on.
100%.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's I don't know. The campaign was pretty okay for me. I do agree with Tuna a lot that like gear progression is really weird in PoE. And honestly, the number one thing I feel about gear progression is I'm not getting enough white bases. Like they don't want us to like scour items and stuff. I get that. But with like I still feel like drop rates of bases are the same as they are in PoE 1 almost. And like we're not supposed to scour an alteration spam anymore, so that doesn't really match up.
Yeah,
It's so funny. The moment you want a white base, they just don't exist, eh?
Yeah.
Like they're not in the vendor. Everything in the vendor is blue with some garbage stud, or you just go and find them. I had the same thing. I found a chance orb and I was like, I couldn't find a base to use it on.
Yeah.
For so long.
Speaking of chance orb, like I was about to bring that up too because there's a unique shield with spirit on it, and it's got really high block rate and chaos risk. And obviously on hardcore, I'm really desperate for chaos risk. I was like, I'm gonna try to chance this shield. So I'm like, okay, what's the drop level of the white base? Level 7. Cool. I go to level 7 zone on a new character. I farm for 1 hour, and I did not ever drop a white base for the shield. And I checked the vendor every time I leveled up, and I was like, huh?
Like, yeah, it's actually really hard to find for the chance orbs, especially.
So I don't know, bases. Like the thing is, like it's a little bit sad too because I get the want for not wanting loot filters to be mandatory. So it's a hard problem to solve when you don't have scours and ults. It genuinely is because if you increase the drop rate of white bases, you make loot filters mandatory in the campaign, and they currently aren't, but they are mandatory during maps anyway. So
yeah,
it's maybe not the end of the world. I think my ideal solution would be like they already have it in the game. I think the solution is tiers, like the way they have. That's like my ideal version of smart loot that I've been yapping on about for like 7 years. And I think they should just start using that system earlier. I think tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 should already start dropping during the campaign because they're already they're already like it's not like you're finding an item level 81 item in the campaign anyway. So I think that would be my ideal solution. Like even in maps, I'm barely ever seeing tiered gear. So I don't necessarily want to see more rare gear and stuff. I would like to see better because I don't want it to be like PoE 1 where there's a 0% chance you're picking up every rare and you're just leaving stuff on the ground. I do think it's more exciting when you drop an item and it's relatively better. So tiered gear, and I do want to do a quick explanation because I do get asked a lot, what is tiered gear? So if you ever see an item like a blue or a rare with like tier 2, tier 5, etc., what that does is when you identify it, it is more likely to be better. Like it might not be able to roll light radius at all, might not be able to roll thorns, or if it rolls life regen, it'll be one of the highest tiers of it.
Yeah.
So on average, not always, like doesn't guarantee the item's going to be good. But if you find 10 tier 5 items, they are on average better than 10 non-tier 5 items. Yeah. And they're not better afterwards. It's not like better to craft on.
Yeah, it's a great system. I don't know why they didn't just have like guaranteed rare drop from bosses to begin with. They ended up patching something kind of similar to that in. And that's certainly an opportunity to do that where like your act boss gives you a tier 3 rare. Like, you know, it's something that's very likely to be good. I feel like that definitely could be utilized a lot more as well. So, like I said, I agree with a lot of the things there, but I just enjoyed the gearing system, so like progression system so much though. Like it's much closer to what I want from the campaign, I guess, and fits the game. It might also be like context-wise. It might just be that I was going really slow. Maybe change things a lot. Exploring, I was really using all of those things, whereas
It
Like,
does add up a
I know you
lot.
guys weren't rushing so much, but I was
Oh.
really going slow. So
I wanna especially ask, like I'm a big fan of agency. I think you should be allowed to like choose your own story, how you're doing it, how you're approaching the game. And I was very surprised as a hardcore player. Like my favorite way to deal with playing on hardcore is to over level and over prepare. I love doing that a lot of the time.
Yep.
And you don't get the same power in PoE 2 that you get in PoE 1. Like over leveling is kind of just rolling the dice repeatedly, hoping for some form of gear. And if you do get gear, you might get a big power spike. But you're not getting as much power from the skill tree early, and especially from gems. And I think a big thing that would alleviate that is being able to 3-to-1 gems up to map level. Like you shouldn't be able to get 16 plus gems, but up to level 13, being able to 3-to-1 gems would be really nice, I think.
It's an idea, dude. I really don't know with the skill gen system. I'm still trying to figure out if I like it or not.
Yeah, the skill gen system is odd, right? Bit weird.
It's like it works well for the campaign. I feel apart from that point where it is a bit harder to over level and over prepare because you can't just grind the levels. You're still beholden to the zone level you're farming. You can only get tier 14s pre-maps. Like that's the best you can get. You can't level them up to 15 or 16 until you go into maps. So you can't really over prepare your power level that much. But then you've got like whole other weird systems where you can just buy the higher level gems and they cost very little for anything up to like level 18 or 19. As I found today, it's like they're like 1 exalt for an 18 or 19. So,
There's some very cool things about the gem system and some very bad things about the gem system.
Yeah.
I think, so as you said, like the fact that nothing is worth aside for 20, but I think like the fact that 20 is worth like 100 exalts is really cool because
it's crazy, right? Yeah.
Makes it a chase item. But the fact that you can't actually like, if I want to level a new character, I have all these skill gems that are level 19 and they're completely worthless. I can't, like give that to my character. And that seems really weird, right? Like, why can't I choose to cut a level 1 from a level 19 or whatever, right?
Yes,
but there's
they do
some
need to
very,
fix that.
very
That's just
cool
a quality of
things
life
about
thing, right?
the system, like the sockets being independent to the gem makes the gem inherently much more valuable. And also the way valing works. Like, for example,
I love that. I love all orbs.
If you have like a level 1 gem, you val it and it goes +1, but the +1 doesn't actually add a level. It doesn't turn it into a level 2. It's a level 1 with +1. So then you can actually put a level 19 gem onto that and it turns into a level 20, right? So it's like the corruption is inherent. It's like an affix on the gem itself. And then how valuable that gem is also depends on, did you put quality on it? Did you socket it? So there's all these like different mechanics that make the gem system amazing, but then the pain is like you level a new character and you just can't transfer your gems over and it's annoying. But that's an easy fix, right? Hey.
Yeah, it might just be that it needs tuning and a few adjustments. And like you said, the ability to craft low level gems should be a thing because otherwise you have to go grind level 1 zones or something. It's a bit silly. But I don't know. I really am unsure about it still. The skill gem system is strange. Rax, did you have any thoughts on like something big you change about the campaign?
Yeah, so my experience, so I've done the campaign a lot of level 4 characters, and it's very, very similar to what Crouching Tuna said, almost exactly. And maybe it's because we're both like serial leveling. So I feel like I don't have the tool. Like you can make good enough gear to clear the campaign, like that's not a problem. But I cannot make the gear that I could make in PoE 1. So like Tuna said, it's exactly the same thing. You hope to get like really lucky with a yellow, like, oh, you need spirit and you need life and you need at least 1 resistance. And then, okay, I'll spend the currency to add a socket to it and add another resistance. And the amount of exalts that I get throughout the campaign, it's better after they made the patch. But if Grinding Gear Games wants me to really, really engage and be crafting the entire campaign, the amount of exalts that I get right now, I can maybe fix 1 to 2 items by the time, like I can find an item good enough, or I can be brave and try on a base that as Zizmer was talking about, I can get a base and try to hit like a pretty decent, like double blue affix, and then I'll regal it and try to hit something, and then maybe I can dump 3 exalts into it. But the amount of like really, really decent yellows that I have personally crafted going through the entire campaign is always very, very low. And then when you find a yellow that's pretty decent, you're like, do I want to exalt this? And then like 4 levels later, you find like a pretty good blue base. You're like, is this good enough to regal? And how good do I have to hit on the regal for me to actually want to replace this yellow that has 5 affixes? And it's like, well, I don't have that many quality things. So which one should I spend them on? And for me personally, I don't mind the vendors selling really good gear. I don't mind checking every once in a while, especially for like something specific and they have like really good. I really like how you can search for it a lot easier in PoE2 by just typing like movement, delimiter, rare, minion, ally, and then you just keep pasting that every time. You just check it real quick, especially if there's like one piece of gear that's really garbage that you're trying to fix. But then if I compare that to PoE1, you want to know what I do? I find more yellows, and then when I find a yellow that's pretty good, I just teleport to my hideout real quick and pay like 1 alteration or 1 transmute, and I add like 20 resist, and it's really, really good. And then I'm just on my way. Like the quality of the quality of the gear that I'm getting in PoE1 is a lot higher. So I think like thematically, it's way cooler in PoE2 that they want us to engage with a lot more pieces, like Zizern was talking about, like get the bases and craft them up. But I think currently with some of the currency that I'm getting, I'm actually not doing that. It's more like Tuna. Like I need to get really lucky and then I'll slam 1 exalt in it and I'll wear it for the whole campaign and that's it.
So I feel like I have the answer. Sorry, go, Ziz.
Yeah, I just have a follow-up question for Rex there. Would you rather find gear or would you rather craft gear?
So, I mean, I like both, but for me, the big dopamine is when you find it. When the mage blood drops or something like that, that's more enjoyable for me in an ARPG than sitting and crafting. But I do like crafting as well. But for me, crafting is usually something that's a little bit more end game.
Yeah,
sure. I like when you get both. Of a
mix, right?
You know, yeah, when you find an amazing item and then you slam it, and then it's amazing, yeah. Because then you have a bit of ownership over it as well.
PoE2 kind of likes that, like that way to modify an item to kind of be like just a little bit better for you. Because the crafting bench did that, but the sockets on your first playthrough, you're picking up all these items to try to like scrap them, and you get these shards and you have like 1 or 2 artificer orbs maybe, and then you can't replace the runes. Like that to me just felt so frustrating that it's like I use this artificer orb which is so valuable to me in the early game.
Yeah.
And then like now I'm stuck with that item because of the fact that this artificer orb is so valuable, right?
Yeah. That was my experience as well. Same.
Yeah, I mean on especially rune sockets, like I'm very positive about the game, but on rune sockets I'm borderline hateful, where like the fact that you can't replace runes is literal insanity, and I just cannot. I can't. I'm like, why? It's so crazy. This should not be a permanent choice. Like, because the thing that ends up happening is and I really like the ideology they had of like, you find a new upgrade, there's no sockets on it, you can slap that on. And what felt so shitty for me was finding a big upgrade, and I'm like, well, I just put fire rest charms in my chest. If I could have cold rest charms in my chest now, I could use this, but now because I can, I have this really cool item just sitting in my stash, looking at me, going like, yeah, you should have not put runes in your chest to fix your resist problem. You should have predicted the future, Zizern. And I'm like, that's crazy. That needs to change.
It's funny because it's like, in a sense, they're no different to like an exalt that you can control what it does, right? But they are little items in the thing, so they feel like you should be able to change them, and they're trying to fulfill that role of like the bench, which was changeable. But I think like what Tuna and Rax are both talking about, I think the answers are both there. One of them is runes, so I think just being able to like destroy the existing runes in the item to replace them as the cost would be, I think, a great solution. But the other thing is essences. If greater essences and normal essences, the greater ones especially, dropped a lot more through the campaign, like I feel like they should, then that kind of plugs into and solves so many of these issues, because the item progression system is very much about that, like finding those magic items and then regaling it, and then it being good enough to warrant exalting it past what you're currently using, which is very hard to do with just random regals. But if you have the greater essences, then you have a bit more control over what that regal does, and you're able to ensure that you are getting something that is going to be worth it, putting exalts into, so that you can then make that upgrade. So it answers a lot of those questions, I feel. But I found one greater essence in the campaign. Only
Essences
one.
are amazing, and greater essences don't exist, by the way. Like they just don't.
I found
Even in
one.
maps.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I found one. Like they obviously, I think GGG looked at them and they're like, "Oh my lord, this is like a targeted exalt." But really, this should be like the answer to the early like gearing steps and problems. You know, I think they need to be super common. Honestly,
the problem with that though is that they are so powerful. So if you give me those during the campaign, I'm still saving them for the end game. So I don't fully know what the solution is there. It might be something like item level on essences, where if I find one during the campaign, I can't use it on an like
I mean,
like
that is
basically what they had in PoE 1.
I think they almost like, although they are more powerful, they're also limited. So like, if you find a defense essence, right, but you don't care about defenses, then it's worse than a regal. So that also, I think, warrants them being more common. Like that's a solution in itself. So I don't know why they are as rare as they are. That would, I feel like, answer many of those questions.
And something here that I think like Ziggy is kind of alluding to, which I agree with. So like Tuna and I are saying like we're not quite feeling like we're getting what we want in terms of gear progression and crafting and getting the right solutions compared to PoE 1 in the campaign. And Ziggy is saying like it's very comfortable and suggested some solutions. What I don't think grinding gear games should do is do like a massive overhaul. I think it's really, really close. I think it's close. For example, I agree with Cizern, like moving the runes around. It's exactly what he described. It's, oh, now I ascended as a witch, and now fire res is so good for me. I need to cap my fire res, but 5 levels ago I needed the cold res, and 2 cold reses are in my chest. I can't replace it. And guess when's the next time I'm going to get a good yellow chest that's even close to as good as the one I have? Oh, it's not going to happen for the rest of the campaign. But you don't need to triple the drop rates of exalts. You don't need to do anything crazy. But I think a lot of little changes would make the campaign feel a lot better.
Agreed. The tools are there. It's just about tuning how we get them and when we get them. And
the bones are good. Like I feel like it. That's why I am enjoying it so much. I think it is so close. I think you're right on there, Rax. So I'm surprised no one mentioned this, but my biggest complaint about the campaign, since I did enjoy the item progression quite a lot, was the pacing of end zone size stuff. It's been talked about a lot, but I don't think they should make every zone half the size. I think they should keep some big zones, because some big zones work really well. Like when you go into like the Val's city, and it feels like a city. It's giant and sprawling and massive, and that's really epic. But that is diminished. That excitement of that being such a big zone is diminished by the fact that every other zone has been massive. So like even the zones that were supposed to be just some like little connecting zone that is unimportant was also massive. So they have real pacing issues right now. Where
but also if that zone is going to be that big, it needs more stuff in it. It feels very empty.
Agreed. That is definitely the part 2 of that. Like they have a lot of cool stuff in exploration, because I've been mapping it all out. Right, there's a lot, both marked on the map and not marked on the map. There's secret stuff as well that's not marked, and yet it's still probably not enough. I don't know why they didn't put more of the endgamey stuff in the campaign a bit more as well, especially in Cruel, or, you know, as you ascend the axe, like strong boxes and stuff. Like they need improvement, I think, but why are they?
I was about to say, I could rant about strong boxes.
Yeah. I think everyone probably agrees about that one, but it's definitely big pacing issues with the campaign. And it's not even just the zone size. Like some of the zone sizes being big would be less of a problem if the exits were more marked more clearly and the minimap had them appear from further away. Your character has to be right on top of something, like a quest objective or an exit, to actually flag it. So many times I missed the exit by like just running, a fragment of a screen too far away. And then you have to do this entire loop of a gigantic zone. It takes actually 10 minutes to get back there.
I think that is something that is definitely tuned incorrectly. Like when you're walking by an important object, a waypoint, a door, whatever, you have to be kissing it in order for it to be revealed on the minimap.
Yeah.
I wish they'd be like way more generous with that. But on the zone size, I agree with you. I think some of the zones can be massive. Some of them should be toned down. Yeah, I could understand why grinding gear games would do this, because, I think the basic logic here is, you're playing an ARPG, you want to go into zone, you want to kill monsters and farm. You don't want to a zone every 30 seconds and go into town like that's stupid. it makes perfect sense. It's kind of like the story of the three little bears, right? Like one of them's too hot, one of them's too cold, and one of them's just right. I feel like a lot of them are like just too hot. And I think Zizrin makes a good point. Like a lot of time, like they said in their interviews that they tried to make it interesting. Okay, so when you run into the dead end, what happens? Maybe you'll get one yellow chest and it's going to have nothing in it. Like they tried, but it really has nothing in it. So you don't get anything for that.
Yeah.
And I think I'm guessing one of the complaints for people that are maybe a little bit more casual playing the game is when you get into one of these zones, it's like a commitment. Like it's good that you can pause in the game, but for the people that only have a limited time to play, it's like, all right, honey, I'm gonna do one zone in PoE 2. I'll see you in an hour, maybe if I get lucky, if I run straight to the exit. But sometimes like the zone is so big when you get to the end of it, you're like, oh, thank God, I'm finally out of that zone, rather than, that was super epic.
Yeah, even the most epic zones really lost their steam just because they were like 30% too long or something. So like I know some of you didn't like this zone, but the Mad Max-esque end of Act 2 where you're like running along the cities that are like smashed up against each other, I was like, that's so sick. And then it kept going and it kept going and it kept going. I was like, oh my God. It's just, okay, like definitely this should have been like an exciting moment that then went into the boss. It's just, but I agree with Rax though. Like it came from a good place, I think. I think they were like, let's give them less load screens, more monsters to kill, and let's give them really freaking epic zones that feel cool. So it's like also we developed this tech so we can make the zones really big and it works. And also we added cool exploration stuff. So let's make the zones big so we can have lots of that. Like I feel like that was their process, right? Yeah. And they just kind of ended up that like the pacing was a bit.
Well, I'm really curious. How do you guys feel about the length of the campaign? I think that's been a bit of a problem with the nerfs too, because especially with the respec cost, the people that were like they nerfed their build and they were told like, well, you just have to reroll, right? Like it's some of my viewers are 3 or 4 days to get through the campaign. And I think the fastest I've heard,
right?
Yeah, it is because it's early and we're still learning. The fastest I've heard somebody finish the campaign so far is 7 hours from Myro, 7 or 8.
With gear though, right?
That is with gear, yeah. I wonder how fast it's gonna be. Like, by the way, like I'm playing very slow in hardcore. I'm so scared. So I'm like 1 day, 8 hours. The fastest I've done the PoE 1 campaign is 2 hours. So it's like it's a very very large change for me. But yeah, basically my question is, do you think Act 4, 5, and 6 will be as long as doing Act 1, 2, and 3 twice?
I think it's a lot of the things that we've been talking about. It's like a compounding thing that adds to why it takes so long. 1, we're brand new. 2, the gear progression is not. I don't know if this is confirmation bias or whatever, but when Zizrin said he got way better items in Act 1 than the other acts, I just played a witch. The first yellow that dropped for me was a yellow +1 skill minion hat. I'm like, all right, I'm loving life. I haven't seen anything even close to as good as it. Now I'm in Act 5. So it's the fact that we're new. It's the item pacing. It's the fact that maybe a lot of the maps, like, I don't know if the actual campaign is necessarily even longer than the PoE 1 campaign, but we're not zooming like we did in PoE 1, even close to it. And so it's like, I don't even know if it's the fact of how long do they make Act 4, 5, and 6. It's more of, our map's going to be whatever, 30% smaller. Are you going to give us a few more exalts or a few more essences or a few more bases or a couple or more, let us unsock the runes, this and that? Have we done the campaign 20 times instead of 2 times? And then I think all of those things I think would make the time be a lot more reasonable.
I think if they fix the pacing, so shrink some of those zones down and like remove the backtracking issue by flagging exits, and then they could make, and so let's say they did that for the first 3 acts, they could then make acts 4, 5, and 6 the same length, I think, and it would be perfect. I would actually love it if it was like that. If we had that experience I had with the first 1 through 3, with the last few acts, oh my God, I would love that. I thought it was really good, but just, it was just ruined by that pacing, that backtracking.
I'm actually expecting it to be shorter
than PoE 1. Or
No, I mean, I'm
what it
expecting 4,
is
5, and 6
now.
to be shorter.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to judge because I kind of blasted through crawl because my character was really smoking stuff at that point. So, and I had 25% move speed, which the game, by the way, to go off on a tangent here, the game plays so much better when you get 20% move speed boots. I see people leveling still with like some random unique boots they found. No, make the move speed boots. It needs to be not as rare, and I feel like they should be implicit. I feel like move speed progression should be
I was about to say that.
I hate boots.
Yeah, it needs
The
to be
worst
that
item in the
like
game.
boots get a little faster as you move up through the tiers, and then some boots on those tiers have like a little bit less, but they have some powerful effect where it's like 50% less slowing or whatever. Yeah. As like you get to make interesting choices between the implicits or something like that.
Didn't you talk about that with the devs? Because I explicitly remember an interview where they talked about implicit movement speed.
So I was looking for the implicits, and I was hoping for it so much, and then I saw that not only is there none on boots at all, which I'm devastated to learn that. But move speed seems to be rarer. I think the weighting is lower.
It's so rare. It doesn't exist.
Yeah,
I pick up so many boots. I transmute them all. It does not exist. I am so upset by that.
The thing that kills me is they added implicits for chest armors at endgame, and they're sick. They're so exciting. It's so fun. The implicits, if you haven't got there yet, you start finding the expert tier chests, so the endgame chest armors, and they start getting like really impactful, really exciting implicits. And I want that in boots as well. But I also think it should be there the whole way through. I think it's actually something to mention to other game name. I think Last Epoch does a really good job with that.
Yeah.
Item progression is more tied to the base.
I totally agree, because in PoE 1 there is a choice. You don't need movement speed on every boot. Like, movement abilities are really powerful. Like Whirling Blades doesn't get affected by movement speed. Shield Charge is okay without it a lot of the time, and you can Lightning Warp or Flame Dash. So like a lot of the time I go for like triple ES. I actually have a crazy boot right now. It's got like 500 armor, 20 Chaos Res, like 36 fire, 36 cold, but has no movement speeds. It's a dead boot. Like,
there always should be decision making with items, and there's none with boots, because if it doesn't have move speed, you can't use it here. It's like you said, it's not optional here.
And Sanctum without movement speed is literally like you've lost some sort of challenge run.
You're being punished for playing basic.
Am I doing this for charity right now? What's going on?
Yeah.
I think it's exactly what Ziggy D and everybody illustrated. It's not really fun to get movement speed on your boots. They just have to be there. Versus the chest piece, you're not really expecting that really godly, extra affix. So engaging with that in the end game and finally hitting that feels good. And it's just, I'm actually very surprised. I think, not to put words in his mouth, but I think it was Kriparian. I was talking with Kriparian about this about a year ago, about different ARPGs and movements being an implicit. I would be very interested to hear from grinding gear games. I would doubt that they skipped this conversation, right? I'm very surprised that they didn't do that. I'm wondering why.
Yeah, I wonder if
they were pretty receptive to the idea.
I thought they were, more interested in doing stuff like that. I don't know what the decision making that led to that one was. So we touched on it, but Ascendancy, definitely a topic to discuss. It's one of the things I'm most concerned about, and yet enjoy. Somewhat. Like, I actually kind of enjoy the Trial of Sekhmet. Crazy, I know, at me. Definitely at me about it. But
I thought you were about to say you enjoy that you can't respect them, and I was like, I have fighting words.
No. I definitely think you should respect Ascendancies. Okay, we can get that out of the way. Does anyone disagree with the idea of respecting Ascendancies, and why? Like, I don't think the devs can even really answer that question beyond some kind of just like nebulous class identity thing.
No, I mean, like, they said they wanted choices to matter. I don't think that is a good choice to matter, because it's so early.
It's a long-term choice that you have to make really early on, right? And you can't but it's still too late to like re-roll. It's not like selecting a character at the start, because you can just choose a different character. You have to get a decent ways into the game. That is definitely a thing. But the overall trial system, I'm definitely concerned about, just because I love the idea of what they're trying to do here by giving varied ways to ascend, but in practice, that's not really the case, because if you want your ascendancy when you can get it, and that's Act 2, so you are going to do Trial of Sekhmet. You're not going to wait until Trial of Chaos. So even the balance issues in these things aside, the choice system seems fundamentally a little broken from my perspective. And the content types of both of them are very divisive, right? Like they work really well for some builds, not well for others. Some players love them, some players hate them. And even if they, let's say, add the Trial of the Ancestors or whatever as the third one, which is what people are guessing it'll probably be, then would that to you folks look like a good spread? Is that something that works for Ascendancy? Should it be done in a completely different way?
I think the thing you brought up was a very good point, that you don't get the second one. Like, you don't get the choice early. I think when you do Balbala, it should give you a choice. It should give you the option to do Ultimatum right there and then, with like whatever the lowest or easiest version of that would be. Also, they should remove the bird from Ultimatum, the one that one-shots you with 6 different moves, but whatever. They should give you a choice between Trial of the Second and Ultimatum there, and then in Act 2, it should give you the same choice, but on a harder one. You can have a little blurb. Like, I really like the skill point blurbs. Like when you select a skill, it's like lightning arrow. Is it like make one of those for the trials and be like, like a little video. And like a quick explanation to new players of what they are and what builds they might favor. Like, for example, like, this is Trial of the Sekima. If you're playing a melee build, you're about to have a really bad time unless you're an extremely skilled player. And then, like, this is Ultimatum. You might get one shot by a bird. Like, just some like blurb to give an indication of what it is. And I really like the choice idea. Like, you can choose how to ascend. I don't think they're tuned very well right now. I think the first 2 floors of Trial of the Sekima, I'm vibing super hard with. It's really good.
I think pretty good.
Pretty good,
the 3rd floor and the 3rd Ascendancy, I think, is already at the point that you have to be almost a 1% player to be able to ascend. So I think like those players are like, yeah, it's fine, skill issue. What are you talking about? But should Ascendancy be something that's a skill issue? And the 4th one, by the way, is 0.1% of the player base are ever going to get the 4th one unless they pay for it.
Yeah.
That is hard.
Yeah. That's wild. That's certainly a choice, isn't it? To make like
certainly a choice.
Uber Pinnacle boss be the way you get your last Ascendancy point.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's the wrong choice, but like I love that discussion. Like, should Ascendancy be something where it is literally mega skill issue?
Yeah. So they obviously wanted to tie the different trials to the different cultures and the different acts, right? Which is pretty cool. Then you have the Chaos one. That's what their people did in that act to become more powerful. Like, that's certainly very cool. So it'd be a shame to lose that. Yeah. So I don't know if there's some way they could do it where, like, when you go to the entrance of the Trial of Sycamours, they're like, here you can have the Trial of Skill, and that's what we have currently with the honor system and everything. Or here's the Trial of Wits, and it's like more of a gear check, you build check. You know, it's raw combat against some tough enemies. Yeah. If you build a good character, you'll get through. And then there's, I don't know, the Trial of something else, which is Wits, and it's about, you know, some sort of Tota style thing. Like, maybe have a few different choices there could work just within the context of that one.
I agree with that.
Culture,
and it's like
maybe could work.
That's another thing you like. That's a good point. Is like, it really sets builds so much apart. So I did my 3rd Ascendancy, and it wasn't really that much of an issue. It was a little bit harsher because I did it just as it dropped on hardcore, and the last thing I got was a 40% damage debuff. But even with that, the fight ended pretty fast because I am playing a really strong build. But it's like, especially on a player that isn't no-lifing and like isn't as comfortable playing video games and stuff, if they're already on a worse build, those players are really gonna struggle.
I will say about the Trial of Sycamours, because I'm specifically sciencing that yesterday and today, and I just did my run. I didn't want to do it off stream, but I wanted to do it before the podcast, so sorry viewers, but I did it. I recorded it at least. We can talk about it later. But I did my 3rd run just before this because I wanted to test and be able to just confirm for myself. The way they've designed Sycamours is just something that's been really poorly communicated. So we PoE1 players especially understand relics as being a way to boost our wealth, like production from Sanctum. In this, they are as mandatory as resists on your gear. So you are expected for the 3rd set of points to have some resistance relics and some honor boosting relics. And when you get them, it is night and day. So I did one farming run of a level 50 with 2 floors. And you drop so many relics, even just in a single run. And with augmenting those and 3-to-1ing on the bench that allows you to, whatever that bench, reforging bench, using 3-to-1s, I was able to get a suite of max life, increased maximum honor, and honor resistance ones. Not even like maximum honor resist, which is a thing you can get later on. But doing those probably had like 50 something like honor resist, 20% increased max honor, 20% increased max life. And it was so easy. It was so easy. Like if you do that and over level, you're gonna have such an easy time on anyone. Like I was like, okay, I could definitely do that on warrior. I was obviously doing it on a mercenary, so it's even easier. But I could definitely do that on a warrior or something in that state because everything was just doing so little damage. So I got hit by traps and I had like it was like 2,500 or 3,000 honor and I took like 40 damage or something. I was like, oh okay, this is a bit different to the first run.
The first time I did the third ascendancy on my softcore character, I had no honor resist charms. I hadn't found any, and I stepped on the button to open the door, and the gas cloud spawns. And I was reading chat, and it's like, whoosh, honor bar gone, and I'm like, huh?
Lots are overtuned for sure. So there's like a ton of refinement and balancing going on. But I just think in addition to that, right now they just never communicate this at all. Like that's not a thing from the beginning. Is that you're expected to gear up for the Sanctum specifically.
And it's the same thing like when you actually get to the Shikari fight, like the Scorpion fight, the third boss. Balbala is like, step on the vents. That's bait. Like the fight is infinitely easier if I do not step on the poison.
Are they supposed to do something
vents.
positive? I tested them a bunch. They just seem to be traps.
Her from doing the underground attack as much, I think.
Oh, okay. So it makes her come up from the underground. Okay, that's interesting.
Something like that. Yeah, that's bait. Balbala is not your friend. She's still your enemy.
Yes, she's wrong. Those traps are way more dangerous than she is. She's actually quite easy, I felt, mechanically.
Yeah.
Compared to the traps. But the traps are very stationary and avoidable, so as long as you don't tread on them, you're okay. If you haven't seen it yet, the little pressure plates. You step on them, it shoots darts or summons a bunch of bugs or poison gas cloud, which are a bit overtuned in terms of damage, even once you have the resists. But I was shocked at just how much difference the relics make, and it seems to be that for the fourth one, you absolutely have to have like maxed on a resist, max out at 75, maybe get some increased max in addition to increasing and like because you can stack. So armor works, evasion works. Obviously, energy shield is crazy because you can get like a ridiculous amount of it, and that turns directly into honor. And then the relics that give like less boss damage taken, that works. Block works. And then that stacks with your resistances. So if a boss deals fire damage to you, it has to go through your resist and then through the 75% honor resist. So and then mitigated by any like other types of mitigation that you have, whether it's evade or block or whatever. So there is some very powerful tools there to be able to gear check your way through this stuff, but it's not communicated at all.
Yep.
But I think people are starting to figure that one out at least.
There's some weird stuff with the honor as well, where it really just prefers certain things. Like my character is not particularly tanky; it just has mind over matter. But I spawn with 8,500 honor.
It counts the mana, which is that's really clever. I'm glad they did. I'm glad they counted the mana. It's obviously super overpowered.
But my character's not tanky at all in comparison to like my monk that had like 70 PDR and 70 evasion, and he spawns in with like 3k. It's like, okay.
So I don't mind the idea that like some builds are just naturally going to be very good at it. Like evasion ranged builds are going to be better, and mind over matter or ES builds are going to be better. But the warriors seem good once they get geared. Yeah, I don't mind that distinction. It's obviously not tuned correctly. Like it's too much probably. But those are like fundamental wider issues as well. Probably energy shield is a bit overtuned.
Like, the melee boys, they really had a bad time. I just feel really bad for them because they didn't get much honor, and the mechanics are crazy for them.
They're super vulnerable to being attritioned, right? But do you guys feel like with tuning that this system could work long term?
I gotta be honest, man. I'm really not a huge fan of this ascendancy thing. So I understand grinding your games has a task in front of them. They have to make a challenging way that scales up to ascend. And yes, currently there's a lot of problems. Like there's a huge imbalance for melee versus ranged, and maybe some tuning things. And it's honestly probably too late. Like we're probably not going to get anything different. I have never seen an implementation of traps in an ARPG that the community likes in any game, in any league, in any season for anything. I don't even know if it's possible to make something that works. What I have heard and what I have felt in doing this, I guess I've done it 8 times so far, is people keep saying, I never thought I would miss the PoE 1 lab. But
Yes.
I would rather do the PoE lab than
That's a
these
feat.
ascendancies. So then I sit back and I think about why would I rather do the lab? Well, what do I do when I do the PoE 1 lab? Well, I shield charge through all the zones very quickly. I'm honestly kind of playing Mario Kart. I just Mario Kart through. And then I'm going to fight a boss, okay, 3 times. And if I'm in the hardcore gauntlet or something, I might go pick up a dark shrine or whatever. I might have to go get a gold key. But in general, I'm just kind of zipping through it. I got to do 3 boss fights and I'm done. And the whole thing of the ultimatum of go down the pillar, click the thing, sit there for a minute and a half, raise this wall, go over here, grab this thing. It's killing you as you bring it back. Now raise this wall and do this. Like, I appreciate the effort there. They clearly spent some time designing something that's supposed to be cool, but God, it does not feel cool to me. It feels tedious. I can't really speed it up in any way. It's literally a minute 30 there of sitting there. And then when I go into the sanctum rooms, it's like, okay, I pray to God I get the room with like the 3 mirrors, because then I just hit 3 mirrors and I'm done. Versus
It's so fast, those ones.
yeah, exactly. Versus some of them take so much longer, like the one with the traps and whatever. And this goes back to like why isn't movement speed and implicit? If you don't have it, it takes forever. And then of course another huge problem which they kind of addressed is no one could figure out which one do you have to do to ascend. People are doing like a level 61 and they think it will give them their 3rd points. It doesn't, which they've added a tooltip there. So it was also confusing.
Very confusing.
I don't know, like I'm struggling to find a part of the system that I like. I like the points that I get at the end. I like when it's over, but it really does feel like a non-fun chore that I dread doing on every character at every tier. As you said, there's no choice. You have to do this one in Act 2. You have to do this one in Act 3. I know we would lose like some lore there, but I like Zizrin's idea way better of each time you can just choose your path, and maybe like the 3rd one's very favorable to melee. But I would say this is the least fun part of the game for me, and I honestly don't have a lot of great ways to fix it. I don't think traps are fun at all in ARPGs, unfortunately.
So I actually, this might be a hot take. I've never disliked lab. I'm a lab enjoyer. Like, so I've always been really confused why people hate lab so much in PoE 1. So like when they removed it in PoE 2, I was like, I don't get why everybody hated it so much. I'm confused. Like, actually, one of my most enjoyable hardcore leagues was me lab farming for 2 weeks or a week.
That was kind of cool.
So what do you like? What do you like about lab? Like, you enter lab, you're happy. Why? Like,
It's Path of Exile's version of Mephisto, and I love Mephisto farming. I love beetle farming. Whenever I can reset a zone and farm, like if I can like sit there like slot machine like that and farm the same thing repeatedly, optimize the run, and just go like ding 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 ding. I love that, and lab is that. Like every time I click that font, and it was like a really cool helmet enchant, I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing. Like, this is a big part of why I play ARPGs, is that dopamine of hitting something. And I love repetitive stuff, which, like, I mean, it's made by Grinding Gear Games, right? Like, I love repeating the exact same farm repeatedly. Whenever I go back to play Diablo 2, like every single time that I've played Diablo 2, like the last time I did roughly 280 hours of Mephisto, and then I went to play PD2. Well, it's kind of new and a little bit out of the box for me, but I did roughly like 400 hours of Duriel, which is a completely different boss. I don't moat farm it. So that was weird for me, but you know what? I had a lot of fun. I love shit like that. So that was the closest I got to that in Path of Exile since like 2015. Can't remember if Tuna has played since 2013-15. Actually, yeah, 13, sorry, not 15. But I loved piety farming in early PoE and dominance farming. It was one of my favorite things. Just like maxing out my attack speed, going dunk, 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 running to piety, killing piety, getting the loot, and resetting, going over again. Literally one of my favorite things. And the closest we've had to that is lab.
Okay, so hold on. So What's the difference between that specific farm, like the I get it, the repetitiveness, like you min max it, and like just having one favorite map that you know the exact layout of, you know where the boss is, and just over and over and over? Wouldn't you rather do the same thing you just described, but in maps without the triple boss and playing the slot machine there?
I think for me, it's the part of that's a great question. I think the part for me there is a little bit about it's something you can't get elsewhere. And PoE 1 didn't have that much of that. It started homogenizing loot super hard, and that was really a pain point for me. Where like ever since Legion, I've kind of hated loot, and I really wanted to go back hard. Like I really like what they're doing in PoE 2. Like Delirium drops Delirium, Breach drops catalysts. I'm not like randomly getting Delirium orbs by doing Breach. If I want that, I want to engage with that mechanic. And Lab did that really well. It's the only place to get enchants, and that was really fun. And I think we should have more and more of that. It should be the only place to get something should be one location. You should not be able to get generic loot anywhere else, in my opinion.
I think
Lab did that really
well. That is really important. I agree. I think the
Yeah.
fact that like you're going to lab and you can get the helmet enchant is just like such a huge appeal for
and maps and farming bosses like that didn't. I don't know. It is different. It's hard for me to pinpoint exactly why. I think a lot of it is just that like that is larger loot for doing like one thing, and it is more repetitive. But yeah, actually, I do like favoriting a map. Also, I could rant for like 2 hours about PoE map layouts in PoE 2. But yeah.
We'll try and get to that in a minute if we can. But
So yeah, it sounds like
ahead,
so the main thing that you like is just the really the unique rewards and the magnitude of the rewards of running the lab. It might not specifically be tied to the traps and the triple boss itself.
Well, it is also like it's a very so in a map. I'm trying to articulate exactly why I like it. It's definitely a little bit that it's like a very repetitive thing, and I can feel myself improving on that layout, right? Like eventually I was doing like 1 minute, 10-second runs, and I don't know why, maybe it's just a my brain thing, but I don't get that feeling in maps where I'm like, oh, I did this strand in 1 minute, 10 seconds is different than doing the lab in 1 minute, 10 seconds.
The thing is, though, is this isn't about ascending. That's just about farming. You like farming this content, and
for sure.
I agree. Like Sekimas, I really want that to be part of the game because I think it's really cool to have that significantly different bit of content to farm. But don't really think it should be the trials. I honestly think the best way to do trials would be that every ascendancy has a unique boss they fight that's flavored to and mechanically based around what they're getting from their ascendancy, what they're going to get. So they defeat some, fire demon to ascend into a fire demon.
I think that's
that would
a good
be
idea.
Just the boss fight. You just go do the boss fight.
That's
I feel like that would be the best way to ascend. But it's obviously a little low work to make 36 bosses. But if anyone could do it, these guys could. But that would, I think, be the least controversial, most fun, and snappiest, and still feel really epic. Because that idea of us doing some challenge to gain power is very cool. I think ascendancies have been huge for Path of Exile 1. That's like a class identity and a progression. Everybody loves a prestige class, So I think that's that would probably be the ideal. But like you said, Rax, it's probably too late. I don't think they're going to change how we ascend. So it's maybe a case of making the best of this. And I think they probably could get there, but it's really going to depend on that third trial, giving the good spread of things.
Maybe it's just lab. Maybe it's just normal lab again.
Maybe.
They're like changing whatever they were going to do, and they're putting in lab instead. Like, yep.
You want to know? You want to know an idea?
Two with traps for the trap haters.
So an idea, kind of like Ziggy said, which might be kind of like his idea, but maybe a little bit smaller in scope, is like the whole point of the game currently is to get to the pinnacle boss and do the 4 tiers of the pinnacle boss, right? We could make it doesn't have to be literally that boss. They can make a different boss, but have like 4 tiers of that. And it doesn't have to be 36 different bosses. I mean, if anybody can make 36 different bosses, it's grinding gear games. But I don't know if you need to make 36 different bosses. But if you kind of introduced people to this boss tiering system, and you don't have to go through all these traps and raising these walls and this and that and stand there for 1:30, and you're a melee and you have to walk through these traps and da 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 da. I think that would overall be received better than what we currently have.
Oh, that like okay, this might be a dumb idea, but what if you have two ways to do these trials? That you have, for example, that if you just want to ascend, that's all you care about. You do maybe even a slightly harder version of the boss, but you just go in and you fight the first boss and you kill the boss, and you don't necessarily get like a lot of rewards. You get whatever the boss drops, but you have no keys then. Then you have two methods of doing Trial of the Secima, right? You can farm it for those that enjoy Trial of the Secima, maybe even buff the reward slightly on that, like drop more keys, like more bronze, more silver, more gold keys, and you can run it similar to Sanctum in PoE 1. But then if you just want to ascend, you fight like maybe even an empowered version of the boss or something, but you go in, you kill the boss, you get your ascendancy, but you don't necessarily get a lot of rewards. That gives you a lot more choice there.
Someone in chat had a similar idea, which was that if you run out of honor, you don't get kicked out, you just don't get some extra rewards or something, but you could still like finish it and get your ascendancy. So there's a few ideas like that they could play with potentially to do this. But I feel like if you're changing fundamentally what Trial of Sekimas is, why not just like make a different way to ascend and have that be its own farmable?
I mean, I think a lot of people want that.
Mechanic.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. but what about this one? A completely fresh idea. You're put into a gladiator arena. On the first ascendancy, it's one yellow bird. And then every time that the other three, it doubles every time.
Oh.
8 birds. Gladiator arena, final ascendancy.
Birds?
Uber, 16 birds. 32 birds.
I want to add that. I kind of feel bad for the content itself, because I think the content's pretty good, but the fact that you have to ascend is what makes people hate it, right? So then everyone has like this visceral hate towards like Trial of the Secima, but then when you go into Trial of the Secima to farm it, you're like, this is actually kind of sick. Like the bosses are cool. Aside from like, I do have some growing pains. Like I really hate the escort mission in Ultimatum, and I think the modifiers are like crazy. Like obviously those are like small issues that would just be like they could fix that just like that, right? But I think the content itself is cool. It's just the fact that people feel gated.
It feels like a chore.
It's such good optional content.
Right.
Like I would be completely fine with farming it in endgame.
Yeah.
But if I'm gated to getting this unlock that is so meaningful for your character, some ascendancies, they have to go through, like they have to do the 3 ascendancies to really unlock their power. Looking at Blood Mage, for example, right? Like if you don't get like more than 2 ascendancies, you're worthless. So it's weird to design a system that's kind of feels like you need the ascendancy to be able to beat it, and you can't beat it because you don't have the ascendancy, if that makes sense.
Yep.
All right. Let's try and talk a little bit about endgame then before we wrap up for the day, since we kind of danced around some of that. But the overall feelings of the endgame, something you enjoy and has potential about it, like something maybe that's different from Path of Exile 1 here that you like better, and then what needs fixing most urgently. Go on, Ziz. I can see you itching.
I know.
But I want to hear it positive. I want to hear something you like. Go on.
It's a positive and a negative, and the same thing. I love the new Delve, but I miss having the map system. I want both. I think this is way, way, way better Delve, but I really love the structure and the clear progression of the old map system. I desperately want both. Whenever I've been talking about, and again, I've been whining about this for years, like I want an alternative endgame, like Delve, like a standalone thing that you can run on its own without interacting with like the regular endgame. This is exactly what I had in mind for that, but I want this and maps. That would be peak for me. Because this feels a little bit like, I don't know, it's a little bit, I don't know, I feel like a bit like thalassophobia almost, like I don't have anywhere to stand. I don't know, it's a little bit lost, but I really like it. I really like exploring it. I really like the different systems. I think towers might need a little bit of work. I like it and dislike it at the same time with a lot of these things, because it's kind of what I was worried about, that I was talking about with it being similar to Synthesis. With don't I feel super encouraged, especially at the end game, to like rush to like 6 towers, set up a zone, and then start farming it exactly like in Synthesis, which a lot of people didn't like there, and that is the case. I do feel like I want to rush those towers, set up a zone, and then farm it. Add the maps with stuff in them, like a boss, anything with stuff in it. I love doing it, but it feels to me like such a waste for me to run a map that doesn't have anything in it.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a kind of weird feeling for me. But yeah, I'm really vibing with mapping now after the changes. I'm really enjoying a lot of it. So I'm very split. I almost have like no exclusively, like just positive. It's like, yes, I love this, but also on almost everything. But I am really enjoying it. And I do like that you can really choose your own difficulty with the Waystone system.
Yeah.
Actually, I love the one, like, I can't remember if it's prefixes being positive or suffixes being positive, but I love that, like, very clear distinction. They're negative, they're positive. So sometimes I'm like, you know what, it's a tier 5 map. I'm actually not going to augment this because I just want a positive thing on this. I really like that system. It's a very clear distinction. I've found like a few rare ones where I have 1 negative and 3 positive, and I'm like, oh, this is a banger. This is such a nice map. So that is probably like the main thing I exclusively like.
When you say you want maps back, what is it that you mean you want back? Like as a separate system? What is separate about maps in PoE1 that you want back here?
It's like way more clear progression. I'm very progression oriented. That's my favorite thing. Whenever I'm playing PoE1, and every league where I've had like a very, like, let's say with gear or anything, I have a very clear step of like what I'm working towards next.
Yeah.
I don't have that in PoE2. I'm very like, okay, I'm just gonna go in this direction. I'm trying to find expedition, but right now it's all about my gear progression more than my map progression. I don't really have like that, like, sure, it's the complete 10 maps of a tier, but it's not that nice feeling of like completing your atlas feels so fucking nice. 3 to 1ing maps to get to the next one and filling in that atlas, such a nice feeling. It's such a nice like monkey brain of like, oh, we're it's like placing puzzle pieces, and then you finish the puzzle and you're like, that feels so nice. We don't have that in PoE2, and I'm very sad about it.
I only just started to like that because it was easy to do now by yourself without trading. As long as it was like that, I'd be okay. But yeah, go ahead, Rex.
So I haven't played the end game much. I've been serial re-rolling like Crouching Tuna. But what I was going to say actually exactly matches what Zizaran just said. So to articulate it, I guess, in my mind, the structure, I love the gotta catch 'em all system that Path of Exile had. It is the structure and the progression through it, as Zizaran described. But I love how there's like 125 maps or Pokemon that I'm trying to catch. It's kind of like Zizaran said, like you're kind of like aimlessly wandering off in a direction. And then if a map isn't current, or what I call waystones, I just call everything maps. If it's not connected to something interesting, it's like, well, why exactly would I go do that? But in the old system, everything was valuable. And after, years and years and years of iteration and all like the cute little vendor recipes, and how not only are you progressing through the difficulty, but you can like choose your own difficulty based upon how you rolled all the maps. All of that stuff was brilliant. It was PoE's endgame was just way ahead of any other ARPGs for a long time. So I think I am missing a little bit of the magic there, and I wish they would just bring it forward as well in some form and continue building upon it. I was a little bit sad that it's like a separate system. It's kind of like it, but not really. So the way that Zizaran opened there is actually exactly how I felt.
I'm trying to like translate in my mind that completionist, that satisfying like clear goals to this new system, and I think they could do it. I think they probably will. I suspect that the fact that we only have half the story right now doesn't lead into anything more, because right now we just have this nebulous goal of like cleanse the corruption. That's what we're doing apparently on the Atlas. So what if they had something like we went into a map and then we got a clue that we're on the trail of one of the seeds of chaos's offspring or something like that, right? And then we have a direction we can follow to go catch them all, to kill that boss, to cleanse that aspect of the corruption, to progress, unlock new Atlas points, and get that completion. And there's like 10 of those that you check off before you eventually get to fight the beast or something. Like I feel like they could do that, and that would give you that similar progression with clear goals.
I like that too. I think that would help me a lot with progression. I also wish they did more with the biomes. I feel they're a little bit more like they're a little bit too many of them all over the place. Like I really wish it could be like I just found a huge desert biome. And like I like more like clear distinction on loot and differences with things. But I love like that. Yeah, I don't know. I am a big fan. I'm such a big fan of the biome idea. But like for example, here I have on my right now I have one lofty summit, right? I have one mountaintop with one map there. But I'm like, it would be so cool for me, like if I'm trying to farm something, to find like I just found 25 forest maps. Oh my god, this is huge. Like that would be so much more exciting. Like a little bit more like Minecraft, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. If there's a reason to be there, like in forest maps, you get this. Like there's one node that does something like that, but it's just cute. But if there was actually some reason to be there, then you'd be excited because I don't know, you were hunting the wolf, the corrupted wolf or something. So you're in the forest biome. That would be cool. Yeah.
Or Terraria does this really well. I also just I hate so many of the layouts. I'm making a map tier list, and the amount of maps I put in F tier, like oh my god!
You might have to rescale your
Augury. Augury has its own tier. It's Augury tier.
Augury tier. Yes. Agreed.
And I'm just like, this is hateful. Like somebody woke up, read a Reddit post sitting on the game, and was like, "Fuck that guy! I'm designing Augury." I hate that map so much.
I've had nothing but auguries. So I've only done maybe like 30 maps, and I feel like at least maybe 1/3 of them have been auguries. I just don't. Why is it so common as well?
Yeah,
just confirmation bias because the levers take 10 minutes to open. I don't know.
I think so, but I think for me, augury single-handedly makes me wish that I could help Doriani construct an iron cannon. That if you just don't like a map, you just like, okay, Doriani, this map, just take it out,
destroy it.
And it just like leaves like a black hole, and it says like completed. And I'm like, cool. I didn't want the loot from that. I just wanted to get past it. Thanks, Doriani.
Yeah, I like that. You can just skip over it. So Augury is a map that has 3 levers on it. It's that slow lever from the campaign, which is really cool when you do it once in the campaign. But when you have to do it 3 times in a map per map, and you keep doing the same map again, it's a bit much. Also, you get locked into the animation where your character's going. And you can't. And if you try to dodge roll, you don't dodge roll, but it bugs. It bugs, and then you have to do the whole map. You have to like leave the map and come back to like redo the levers again in order to do it. And that opens just like a central area that just has rare monsters in it or a boss.
And the thing is, there's a hidden mechanic here. This is a joke, but there's a hidden mechanic where the game has the sense detector. So I'm like, is it safe to hit the lever? Okay, cool. Yes, fucking out of nowhere. Rare mob comes out of nowhere and starts attacking you. I'm like, motherfucker.
Mate, I'm literally throwing nukes in every room adjacent to the lever as my grenadier. And then it's like, yep, you pull it, and it's just like they come out of the woodwork. They know someone's pulling the lever. Who touched the thermostat? All the dads are coming after you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That one obviously needs some changing. It's a universal experience.
And then you get like a beach map, and you're like, oh, I'm home. It's strand, it's beach, it's the best thing ever. I will say I enjoy maps with bosses 100 times more than maps without bosses. Yep. I would love to see a rework there.
That was going to be my biggest complaint.
Yeah, actually, every single map should have a map boss. Every single one.
Crazy idea, right?
Every map that has the boss icon should only be a boss. There should be nothing else. It should just be like when you see that boss icon, you go into a pretty hard boss. It could be the campaign bosses. It could be like 20 times harder than anything else. You can be like, well, I actually need a bossing build to do these.
Would you like have a separate waystone item for that? Because it wouldn't really work with the current waystones, I don't feel. You'd have to either have none or maybe a separate item you could roll, a bit like invitations or something. It could be like a boss modifying thing, maybe.
Well, I think maybe the play for those is that you have to put in a white waystone, so you choose the tier, and that's how you choose the difficulty.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
It could just be.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it could just ignore the waystone modifiers. Just take the tier as is or instead. Just ignore the modifiers.
It's a good way to scrap your trash ones.
Actually, that's I like that.
Because you can't re-roll them, right?
Yeah, but
So-
it feels very empty for me. It's the same feeling of eating a meal and there's no bacon in the meal. Like it just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, devastating.
So I was very willing to let them cook with this idea when they first explained it. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, cool. Yeah. So like I get it because the bosses are much longer. They didn't kind of end up being, maybe they'll tune it so they will end up being a bit longer. It makes more sense to have a system like this, but I was definitely willing to let them cook with this. But after having played it just for a little while, I literally want every boss to have a map. And I thought it was supposed to be 1 in 4, but I don't know. It doesn't
rare.
seem like it. It
No.
seems like 1 in 10 or something.
Sometimes you get like
Bosses.
4 bosses right next to each other, and that's pretty cool.
Sure, yeah, but it mostly seems to be quite a bit rarer, and those are infinitely more satisfying. So I don't think this like rare clear system. I think they're starting to make it work through brute force because you only do like 80% of the map, and it's showing you the rares, and a fair bit of the time that works okay. Sometimes the rare's right at the back of the start of the map and you have to backtrack all the way. So that's a whole problem that should just never be a thing, in my opinion.
I would infinitely enjoy the game more if rares just showed on the map from the start. Let me just make some sort of like route and like find them because
or they at least need to show when you engage them because I fought a rare down to like 1/3, but because they're not visually obvious in PvE2 currently, also needs to change. I walked on because I thought it was just a random bug, and then I go back and it's flagged, and it's like, oh, there was this guy that I was fighting that was like left in a corner somewhere.
I totally agree. One of my favorite leagues was. Oh, sorry.
They could also seek you towards the end of the map, right? Instead of just like hanging out. It's like
they probably couldn't with the game's tech because the way the game engine works is 2 screens away from you, everything's frozen. So it probably wouldn't work. But I feel like, so a crazy idea, right? All right, let me cook for a second. What about if you go into the boss room, there's no boss because it's not a boss map. Instead, a bunch of monsters you fight. Like you get ambushed by a bunch of waves of monsters or something like that. You have an AoE clear map. And that's the final encounter. Then you get that feeling of the final encounter, which finishes the map. You don't have to do this stupid rare hunting thing they're trying to make work. And you can still like choose to do bosses or not do bosses. I feel like that could work. It could be the mechanic. Like it could be the rituals. Complete the rituals and then the map's done. It could be like complete the breach and the map's done.
Yeah, like, for me, it is definitely a big part of the fact that I don't feel like I'm finishing the map. I feel like I'm leaving the map unfinished, and that's like feels really bad.
I'm actually constantly unsure if I finish my maps or not because of that. I have to keep like going back in and checking because I'm like, did I actually complete that map? I look at the atlas and I'm like, oh, I didn't complete it because I just left because I thought I was done, but then there's not that clear distinction. So definitely an issue there, but it seems like there's a few ways they could solve it.
On top of that, I don't know if you're experiencing this in software, but especially in Beyond maps, but even in like regular maps, sometimes Rare have what seems like undeath effects that aren't. They're just cosmetic fun things, which are hateful. And then the game also has the most undeath effects I've ever seen in a game, which seems very unnecessary for the pace of the game.
So
I count to 5. Yeah, I count to 5 before looting right now.
Yeah. Good strategy. I think that this is, and I really, really hope, maybe this is copium. I think that this is just a byproduct of the fact that there had to be a bit of Control-C, Control-V over the Path of Exile 2 here with them copying and pasting. And that is not done yet because the game's kind of core promise is that through more meaningful moment-to-moment gameplay, they don't need to be cheap to challenge us because the way that it works in Path of Exile 1, in order for us to ever be challenged, the monsters have to be threatening after they're dead because we kill things so fast. So if they can achieve that, then yes, Endgame should also be able to hold true to that promise most of the time where they don't have to have on-death effects. Things don't have to linger after death. They don't have to hide on-death effects behind loot labels and stuff. So I really hope they can realize that promise long term, but it's 100% not there at the moment.
Endgame is in such a weird state. I think it just doesn't feel like it feels completely out of place because you come out of the campaign and I think the campaign is amazing. And you jump into Endgame and it just does not feel like I have a hard time being positive about Endgame because I really love killing monsters and I really love getting loot from them. But when I'm thrown into the system of like, as this said, there's no linearity. You don't know where you're going. You don't know what you're doing. You're just kind of like wandering about. And also the weird thing as well is that like you also have no agency because you just feel like you're in an ocean and there's like, you don't know what you're doing. And then the developers on top of that, dictate what you have to do in the map, which is really weird for Path of Exile, because Path of Exile has always been about you choose your own sort of like cheesy way to say it is adventure. But like, if I don't want to kill map bosses in Path of Exile 1, I don't do it, right? But I go in and I do my essences or I do my whatevers and I leave the map. And the fact that they're now dictating what I have to do is a serious step backwards, in my opinion, in game design and like in how I feel like I would approach mapping, because it just sort of makes it so that like I'm not doing what I want to do, right? Which is what PoE's always been. That's what it's always been about, and that's what it will be about once we get more mechanics and things like that. So, yeah, I also kind of disagree with this, with what he said about this is better Delve, because Delve had a clear goal, which is go deeper, and the game got harder.
Just go down.
That, which I really loved that about Delve. And
just go out. I love Delve. Just go out. No, it's the same.
I do agree with that though. Like,
you could go down on the screen if you want.
If this was Delve, I would still want more clear goals, by the way. So I do agree with that.
It's like the goal, and you know where you're going, and you know what you're doing, and it gets harder, and then you overcome challenges through that. And if it's too hard, you go side. You know, Delve was amazing. It was, I loved everything about Delve, but obviously it's like, now it's like kind of a little bit overdue for a bit of an
I think
update,
that's a good point. It's also slightly different because of hardcore. It's like I can't go to 3,000. Yeah, but no, I agree with that. I think that's a good point.
I think just how like obviously far off it is from the vision makes me less worried, because I'm like, this is obviously just placeholder until they can refine this to the point that they've done the first 3 acts. So,
I mean, what they said leading up to here was a couple of months ago, they had acts 1 through 3 really polished. Then they said, well, they could either finish acts 4, 5, and 6 or make an end game for us to play. And I think they made the right decision, but it absolutely feels like that, like with what Crouching Tuna just said. Acts 1 through 3, even twice, felt really good, really polished. And then it felt like this is literally draft 1 of the end game.
Yep.
Oh yeah, it's actually so hard to remember as well, just because they like have so much content there, and there's the fact there's like multiple pinnacle bosses and stuff like that makes it feel like it is a finished end game, but it's obviously clearly not. So I think draft 1 is well put. I think as we're crossing the 2-hour mark, would we like to wrap up maybe with some final thoughts on what are we exploring in the game currently or exploring next? What are the things where you're doing our current goals? And maybe what are you looking forward to in the beta? What's something that they could add soon that would get you really hyped? So go ahead, Ziz.
I mean, so I'm going for the pinnacle bosses. I'm so excited. And I just want to end with like, this game could have released for any game right now. Like, let's say like Last Epoch or Diablo 4 or any company, they could have released this as a basically full product and be like, this is our game. Enjoy. We're going to be working over as live service over time. And people would be like, wow, what an amazing game. Yeah. It is insane to me that there are 36 ascendancies that are going to be in the game total. And that this is like what like the end game they've cooked up on like short notice. I'm so like, I'm negative about a lot of things, but I'm so incredibly positive for the future because I know the state that Path of Exile and Path of Exile 1 launched at in 2013, and the fact that this is our launch date is beyond insane to me. I am so fucking excited for the future of PoE 2 when this is our launch date.
Yeah, this is such a high bar they have, right? Like they've set themselves such a high bar. It's crazy. Like
it's why we hold them to the standard,
our expectations are so like out in orbit.
And it is actually a lot freer a game than PoE 1 because you're not finding any items. Your stash tabs are a lot more valuable.
What about the gem
so player friendly?
The gem tab is very
mandatory. I feel like I need to now. Yeah, that's true. They're going to get me with that one.
Bro, it's on sale. Quick. It's going off sale tomorrow.
Gotta go get some points.
Whenever people ask me, I'm like, you need the currency tab and the gem tab and maybe some premiums. But like, honestly, like, don't need the delirium tab.
Give me the map tab though, right? We need that here.
I hope that comes this week.
What about you, Tuna?
I want to add something in regards to the MTX, which is kind of something that like when I first logged into the game, I was like, oh, you know, it's like it kind of shows where their priorities were. Where like the MTX wasn't working, the shop wasn't working. There's like few tabs.
Yeah.
I found that to be kind of like, I mean, my devs feel strong, man, you know? But, I think, so for me, because I think the end game is still like a lot to come. I'm just mostly gonna focus on understanding builds, understanding mechanics, so that I set myself up to know what I want to play, what I enjoy about the game, and that sort of stuff. So I'm gonna be re-rolling a lot. I don't think I'm really gonna be going hard on like currency or any of that sort of stuff, but I do also want to experience the cool items and what possibilities they open up for builds, because there's some crazy stuff, really crazy stuff out there. So that is what I'm gonna be doing. What I look forward to the most is them just drip feeding us. I just want new stuff. I just want more. I want to see what what they want to do, and I would just love to hear them talk more openly about just what they want to do and where they want to go and what they want to add and that kind of stuff.
It's tough that they released it on Christmas holidays, right? Because it means that they're not going to be as communicative as they normally would be, because like everyone's gone.
Understandably
so. I expect a lot in the new year.
They deserve a break.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Rex? What are you working on and what are you looking forward to, mate?
So very, very similar to Crouching Tuna. For me, I don't think I have the experience in PoE 1 that you three have. I've only played it for 1 year, but the amazing part for me on PoE 1 was just the learning. I'm just trying to learn so much, and that really makes gaming for me. So I like playing all the different classes, and kind of like how we talked about earlier, we kind of agreed that this is like the rough draft of the end game. Now I'm going to dive into the end game, at least moderately, to see exactly how it all works now that I've tried the different archetypes. But again, exactly what Tuna said, the thing that I'm looking forward to the most, I guess I'll add one thing. The first thing is what he said. I want to see more patch notes. I want to see what is grinding your games cooking up, because I have a feeling like, they're only showing us like 10% of their power, and I would love to see. I'm very, very eager for the new things that are coming. And one thing that I am extremely looking forward to as someone with a math background is I can't wait to theory craft all these different archetypes of builds and then open Path of Building. I will easily sit there for, I can't tell you how many hours meticulously calculating and seeing. Honestly, how wrong was I? Like, I'm trying to calculate how much damage could I possibly do, and I'm sure Path of Building is going to tell me that I'm completely wrong. And I actually, I'm really looking forward to it and trying to understand why.
It's going to be wild, the wild west of builds right now. Yep. I think you guys said it really well. I'm most looking forward to, apart from Spears, I'm very hyped for Spears. Apart from that, I'm most looking forward to hearing Jonathan do an interview again. I want to hear that insight, hear that thought process, and hear his reactions to how things have gone so far, right? Like, be like, yeah, well, this was obviously placeholder. We understand why everyone hates this, and like, we actually thought you guys would like this, and we didn't, and here's why. So, but you've made us rethink it. Like, I think that whole process is going to be really exciting over the next 6 to 12 months. So I'm looking forward to it. And in the meantime, it's hard to decide what to do, right? Because like when endgame is like obviously unfinished, do I push deep into it? Do I focus on different things? I think my core goal is going to be to try and help. There's so many new players coming to the game. I want them to stick around. So like if any of them I can grab and just be like, oh, I couldn't get my ascendancy, so I quit. I was like, yeah, you come here, I'll show you how to do it. So that's what I'm trying to focus on at the moment, even if it means I don't go super deep in endgame or whatever. Just to focus on that. It's just like you said earlier, Tuna, as well. It's fun for me to be having all these new things to learn how they work.
Yeah.
Even if they're going to change, that's just going to be good. I'm going to learn them again.
Exactly.
Well, being
able to erase your memory and like play PoE again. And
mate,
we got the
we don't get this very often, do we?
Right.
Path of Exile 2, how about that? Maybe in a decade we might get that again. So let's enjoy it while it lasts. Yeah. Well, this has been a pleasure, folks. Thanks very much for joining us for some Path of Exile 2 discussions, and all the viewers for hanging out. Hope you guys enjoyed. And, we might see you for the next one soon or on our streams. But hands together for Ziz and Tuna and Rax. Thanks, guys.
Oh, super fun.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting me pretend to be host. I'll see you fine folks later.
Have a good night, guys.
Bye.